independent candidate agents and media, as well as nonpartisan election monitors, were present at the vast majority of polling locations that we observed. Security officers were deployed at polling locations as well. Electronic transmission of polling stations' results allowed the IEBC to present the aggregated presidential vote at the national level, though digital display of the corresponding declaration of results, that is Form 34A for each polling station, was significantly delayed, contrary to expectations. The IEBC pledged that no final presidential outcome will be announced until all electronically transmitted forms 34A and corresponding forms 34B from the constituency tally centers are reconciled with their original signed copies. NASA alleged on August 9th that the IEBC database was hacked on election night, and a large-scale addition of votes for the Jubilee's party's presidential candidate took place. The IEBC chairman, however, firmly denied the allegation. The IEBC's process of comparing original tally sheets, which are legally recognized documents, to the database results should reveal whether that took place and simultaneously preserve the integrity of the process. The delegation would like to draw attention to NDI's August 1st statement concerning the brutal murder of IEBC's IT manager, Mr. Christopher Massano, where the Institute expressed its deepest condolences and joined with those calling for the protection of IEBC staff and a full and effective investigation to bring the perpetrators to justice. Now we'll hear from Governor Whitman, who will provide the election context.
Thank you, Representative Bass. The 2013 Kenyan elections marked a significant milestone in the country's political history, representing the first polls conducted after comprehensive changes to the political system. Among those, and among the most important, were the adoption of the 2010 Constitution and the creation of the new election management body, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, or IEBC. The 2010 Constitution provides a significantly more complex electorate architecture than that which previously existed, including establishing 47 counties with governors and county assemblies. The presidential and other levels of contest also should be understood in the light of the 2013 elections and are the first national polls organized after the suspension of cases pending before the International Criminal Court that resulted from the devastating 2007-2008 post-election violence. On August 8, Kenyan voters cast 6 separate ballots for the president, members of the national senators, county governments, members of the county assemblies, and 1 woman representative to the National Assembly from each of the 47 counties. I will now turn it over to Professor Jenga to talk about the election administration.
Thank you very much. I'm also very pleased and feel honored to be part of this NDI delegation. And with regards to electoral administration, I would like to set the context by saying that in April, NDI deployed a pre-election assessment mission and identified a number of issues relating to election administration. One of these issues, for example, was the perception of the election management body, the IEBC. There was a diminished perception given the way in which the previous commission left and the new commission came in. And then the new commission also had very little time relatively to prepare for the elections. And they confronted quite a number of challenges, especially legal challenges, which hindered their effective preparation of the elections. Another issue at that time was the perception of the register of voters. There were in particular complaints about people identified as dead persons on the register, and there were concerns about how effectively the register could be cleaned leading to the elections. And there are also issues about voter education and how effective it could be leading to the elections. Since our arrival here on this election observation mission, we tried to look at those areas and the issues that were raised, and I would like to say that in general we have observed remarkable improvements on these issues. Clearly, the Commission has worked very hard and have tried to do their best under very difficult circumstances, and the management of the processes on election day clearly show a lot of effort being put in trying to be professional, in trying to meet deadlines and to discharge responsibilities as efficiently and effectively as is possible. And the concerns with regards to the voters register, it appears clearly that there was an audit, an independent audit, and attempts have been made to reduce the number of dead persons on the register, and those that remain, the IEBC tried to explain why they were unable to 100% remove all of those. The other concern relating to deployment of technology and its smooth utilization, I think from what we have all seen on election day, there may have been hiccups here and there, but I think in general the system seemed to have worked in terms of the authentication of voters, and also in terms of the transmission of raw results. The process has not been completed with regards to the uploading of the scanned documents and the final process of tabulation and release of results. But from what we have seen so far, it is clear that a lot of the challenges that we noticed when the pre-election mission was deployed, the IEBC has come a long way in terms of really doing its best under very difficult circumstances. And although they are yet to complete the assignment and declare final results, I think looking at where they were and how far they have come now, I think even in a preliminary context, we may find it useful to commend the activities of the Electoral Commission with regards to progress made on election administration. Now I hand over to Pat to discuss the other aspects of the report.
Thank you, Professor Jega. When Professor Jega and Dr. Jennings and the former chair of South Africa's Independent Election Commission, Dr. Beulah Van, and I were here in April as part of the pre-election mission, we had the honor of meeting with the Chief Justice of Kenya and the head of his judicial election preparation body. At that time and in the interim period, we've been impressed by how well prepared the Kenyan court system has been through this election process. We don't have to point out to you the plethora of cases that have been brought before the courts and how they have been handled. The courts have demonstrated capacity and independence in their handling of these matters, making major findings in favor of challengers on the one hand, and in other cases finding in favor of the IEBC. The courts have received criticism from both of the main political alliances, and the Chief Justice himself has made a strong statement against political leaders casting aspersions on the courts in order to gain political advantage. It is not, in his view, nor in our view, in the country's favor to cast aspersions upon the courts and to try to undermine public confidence in them, particularly at this period where we feel the stage is set for anyone who may document and take their cases and complaints before the court system to seek resolution and to seek remedies. The second matter I'd like to comment on briefly is the media environment. Kenya benefits from an active print, broadcast, and social media. Both traditional media and digital platforms have done a great deal to inform the electorate about the nature of the choices that are before them, and they've been used to create accountability and to mitigate potentials for violence as well. At the same time, there's been a lot of attention on fake news, that is, false reports that are consciously produced, and other forms of disinformation, which are not new to Kenyan elections. In my case, I first started coming to Kenya for the 1997 elections, and have either been present or have been closely watching every election since. At the same time, there is a new dimension that is brought to this by digital media. We've seen the examples of false Facebook postings that have gone viral that were to the detriment of the candidate standard bearer for the Jubilee Party. We've seen fake websites, in particular the well-known Real Wyla website that's out there. There have been fake videos that have been represented to be CNN and BBC that have been circulated as well. Disinformation often plays off of social, ethnic, and other divides in a country with the intent to exacerbate those divides, either to motivate a political base or to demotivate and suppress the participation of an opponent. Oftentimes, they try to exacerbate divides, and that plays into and blends with hate speech and incitement to violence in many countries, which makes it particularly dangerous in Kenya. And for that matter, among the 14 recommendations that our delegation have made is we've called upon civil society and the media houses in this period after the election to track down, check, and dispel rumors and false information so that the people will be in a position to understand the information that they need to enhance political and governmental accountability. Thank you very much, and I'll pass this now to Ambassador Abdullahi.
Thank you, Pat. Good afternoon, as with my colleagues. I feel honored to have this opportunity to address you on the elections in Kenya. I would begin my presentation on political parties, candidate selection, and campaigning. You may recall that in April 2017, the major political parties conducted primaries to determine their general election candidates. While the 2013 primaries were widely perceived as permitting pre-selected aspirants to advance to the general elections, this year's primaries were characterized by sharp competition at all levels. However, poor organization posed problems, including some candidates left off of ballots, persons that did not receive ballots, inadequate means to ensure that voters were members of parties in whose primaries they voted, and disenfranchisement of some prospective voters whose party membership could not be established. I must repeat that this refers to the primaries. A record number of independents registered to compete in the 2017 general elections, representing 25% of the candidates in the August 8th polls. Now I would focus on security and election-related violence. There were sporadic incidents of politically motivated violence during the campaign period, including threats and some clashes of opposing sides at rallies. Hate speech, as described by Pat, and incitement remained a troubling part of campaigning in a variety of ways, including at some rallies, over the airwaves, and the social media. The IEBC took action to address incidences of violence during campaigns by summoning candidates for disciplinary hearings. As the election date drew near, the brutal murder of Musando, IEBC's IT manager, a deadly incident at the Deputy President's home, media reports of increased potentials for election-related violence led some parts to depart areas where such violence could break out after the polls. However, it's clear that some of the exodus of people from Nairobi could also be attributed to people returning to their constituencies to cast their votes. To provide for safety and security on election day, the IEBC and the National Police Service announced that 2 police officers will be posted at each polling station. A combination of security forces mobilized the deployment of 180,000 police officers for election day. In the lead up to the election day, press releases were issued about the tear gas, crowd control, and firearms that security personnel would be given to respond to protests and electoral violence. We also take note of the messages from the police on security throughout the election period. Now, turning to violence against women in elections, reports indicate that some Kenyan women still face a wide range of challenges as politicians, voters, candidates, and election workers. This includes political violence through physical assaults, threats, and coercion, and this includes sexual harassment, sexual extortion, and economic threats. I would also conclude on security issues to say that clashes and threats of violence also inhibit women from political participation, and the consequence of women moving from their families away from areas where political violence might occur may have disenfranchised some women. Now I will turn to universal suffrage and inclusion. The 2010 Constitution provides that sovereignty belongs to the people and that they may exercise sovereign power through elected representatives. It also guarantees equal protection of all rights, free from discrimination based on gender, ethnicity, age, or other status, and the right to universal suffrage in democratic elections. These are clearly stipulated in Articles 1, 2, 27, and 36 of the Constitution. While the Constitution provides a framework for an inclusive political process, barriers to increasing the representation of women, as well as young women and men as political actors, still exist. For example, the cost of nomination, campaigning, and where necessary, dispute resolution compose high hurdles for women and young people. Difficulties in acquiring national ID cards, a prerequisite for voter registration, is still a pervasive problem, particularly for young people. And estimates indicate that youth registration stands at around 57% of the eligible youth voting population. I must add here that I'm impressed with the turnout of the youth in Kenya compared to other African countries that I had observed. The 2010 Constitution specifies that no more than 2/3 of either gender may occupy elected public bodies. This is clearly stipulated in Article 81B of the Constitution. However, the 2013 elections failed to produce that result, and there appears to be no immediate path to overcome the unconstitutional circumstance. At this juncture, I would hand over to Governor Todd Whitman to speak about civic engagement. I thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Kenya benefits from a very sophisticated, active, vocal civil society that has engaged in a number of efforts to mitigate political potential for related violence, including dialogue promotion, early warning, early response efforts, and long-term observation of the campaign environment. Thousands of Kenyans monitored the 2017 election process. The ELOG, Election Observation Group, alone pre-fielded election monitors to all of Kenya's 290 constituencies and issued 5 pre-election reports, while it mobilized approximately 8,000 observers on Election Day throughout the country. It employed national representatives, statistical sample, and a rapid short messaging system, or SMS, reporting to comment on voting and counting processes. Civil society groups engaged in voter and civic education campaigns for the election. The multi-sectoral forum established by religious leaders promoted tension reduction, political dialogue. SMS platforms aided district peace committees through crowd reporting of incidents, while others also joined in anti-violence efforts. And I would say that these efforts were well reported, well received, because what we saw on Election Day was the Kenyan people taking a strong stand for democracy. I will now turn it over to Representative Bass.
Thank you. NDI teams deployed to 13 counties throughout the country where they observed the opening, voting, and counting processes, and many of the representatives from our team are here in the audience. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank them for their work. Overall, our teams witnessed a calm environment free of significant problems or security instances. Throughout the day, teams observed long lines of voters in many polling locations. Women with small children and the elderly were given priority in the queues at most polling sites. We did see a couple of instances of the same baby appearing more than once. And what the presiding officers did was they put a mark on either the baby's finger or cheek so that the same baby didn't come back more than once. And I mention that because I thought watching the presiding officers creatively problem solve, I'm sure that wasn't in their instructions, in their training. In some small polling sites, especially those that use tents, overcrowding may have created challenges for maintaining secrecy of the ballot. Teams also witnessed significant numbers of assisted voters throughout the day. The complexity of casting ballots in 6 separate elections may have contributed to the number of persons who sought assistance. Difficulties distinguishing between closely colored ballots in dim lighting presented challenges for some voters. In addition, most polling stations weren't really easily accessible to persons with disabilities. Observers expressed concern that procedures allowing multiple party or candidates' agents to witness the assisted voting process may have compromised the secrecy of the ballot. IEBC officials largely adhered to voting procedures and performed their functions professionally despite long hours. The electronic voter identification devices were present and functioned well in all polling stations that were observed, although in some locations there were technical difficulties contributing to delays. Some inconsistencies noted in the voter authentication process across polling stations, particularly with respect to the number of attempts made at biometric fingerprint. In addition, a few polling stations lacked a printed copy of the register of voters, though this didn't seem to have an impact on the voter ID process. Counting also took place in a calm atmosphere. Officials generally followed procedures, and party and candidate agents were present through the process in the vast majority of polling stations. In some stations, the counting process was slow to start. When counting concluded, however, party and candidate agents signed the declaration of result forms in the stations observed. The next part talks about recommendations. NDI has made 14 recommendations to the following Kenyan actors: to the IEBC, to political parties and candidates, to the government of Kenya, to security forces, and to civil society and the media. We weren't going to go through the details. I just gave you the categories. The details have been passed out.
At 9 o'clock in the morning, but then we had other issues that emerged along the way, and but at least at last we are happy to be here this afternoon for our briefing, our first briefing, or the second briefing actually. The first briefing was at 5 o'clock in the morning, so this should be the second briefing of the day. And before I invite the chairperson to update us in terms of what is happening, I wanted to put across an announcement with regards to access to the talent center. Only accredited persons shall be allowed to access this particular place. Only accredited persons shall be allowed to access this particular place. And your card must be activated to allow you to get in. We also do not encourage exchange of cards or access cards with other people other than yourself. We saw that happening yesterday and even today in the morning. So in the event that we come across that, we'll deactivate the card and will not have access to the tallying center. We accredited about 2,000 people to access this place, but using a certain protocol. As we come closer to this exercise, we expect to receive more and more guests. So what we appeal to all those who expect to come to Bomas is that you respect the security protocol that has been put in place so that we have order in the manner in which we are going to conduct ourselves. Then there are sections set up for different guests. We have political parties, we have IEBC guests on my right, we have special places for special guests. We're going to have protocol officers from IEBC who are going to guide you when you come in. So it's important that we respect the security arrangement put in place to guarantee order in the manner in which we conduct our business in this particular place. So, ladies and gentlemen, with those key points, and as far as security is concerned, I want to take this opportunity to invite the chairperson of the Commission, Mr. Wafula Chebukati, to give us the latest update in as far as processing of the presidential election results are concerned. Chairman, welcome.